holy crap, a neighbor just called me. Someone is throwing a party at my Airbnb. How in the world do I get them out? Actually, how do I just avoid this from ever happening again? We're going to learn that right now from the Thanks for Visiting girls, Sarah and Annette, on this Fearless Investor podcast. Hey, welcome in everyone to the Fearless Investor podcast. Thanks for visiting us today. And thanks for joining us to listen to the Thanks for Visiting podcast girls, Sarah and Annette. They have an amazing podcast that you can go download, start subscribing, listening to, and they're helping us to be better operators. And this is so key because it's our responsibility to be the best neighbors, the best operators, the best everything when it comes to being a host on Airbnb and short-term rentals, because that's how we keep the integrity of this business alive. Yes, you can throw your place up on Airbnb and start making money, but are you accepting the right people? Are you setting the right expectations? Are you keeping the bad guests out? And if you're not, then that's where it starts to be an issue in the city. So in terms of being the best operators, that's what we're going to learn about today. But speaking of that, are you using price labs? Are you the best price? Are you the best occupied in your market? And if you're not, it's probably because you're not using price labs. And all you have to do to get your free 30-day trial started is go to fearlesskyle.com/price labs. And you can get that trial started along with an onboarding training from our good friends over at Price Labs. This is dynamic pricing. It is taking supply and demand, putting it into a formula and saying, here's what your place should be priced at based on the market occupancy and based on the market rates. It's as easy as that. And it is an amazing tool that helped me to start producing an extra 15 to 20% of revenue along with better occupancy rates as well. So go get it started right now at fearlesskyle.com/price labs for your free 30-day trial along with an onboarding training. Now, let's get to it with Sarah and Annette for the Thanks for Visiting podcast. Girls, they're going to help us be better operators and help us avoid Nightmare on Elm Street situations. Those of you on Airbnb Masterminds, really excited to have Sarah I had it.
I told you didn't have to do it. You know, it's Sarah Karakaian.
Karakaian. Gosh, I've never heard that last name before. So we've known each other. I just never have said your last name. So
all good. No worries.
Sarah Karakaian and Annette Grant for the Thanks for Visiting podcast. Really excited to be talking today about how to avoid Nightmare on Elm Street situations. Why is that going? There we go. Really excited to talk about some of those situations. Excited to talk about your journeys to becoming short-term rental hosts. And honestly, really just excited for everyone to hear how you're helping operators be better operators too. Like that's what it's all about. That's how we build a better community of Airbnbers and short-term rental hosts out there. So Sarah, Annette, I know you both have two awesome stories set up here. What is your craziest Airbnb or short-term rental stories? Let's start with Annette.
Oh, okay. Mine is just, I'm going to say it's more weird. I actually had a horror film director that we were having a festival here, stayed in my place for quite some time. I think like a 2-week stay. And when I went in after to clean it, it was actually my personal home.
Okay.
He had left a different pair of black underwear on the bathroom floor for every night that he had stayed. And he left them all there for me. And so I just thought that was very interesting. I don't know if he was like, I only wear one pair of underwear and then I never wear them again, but there was a plethora of black underwear left on my bathroom floor. And that was something that made you say, So I had to get some sort of like grabber, to collect all of them. I actually still think I probably have a picture of it on my camera roll.
You sure it wasn't like a Hansel and Gretel kind of situation? Maybe he was just getting lost in the house.
No, it was a pretty, small area. It was a large bathroom. I will tell you that. Maybe he got confused getting out of the bathroom, but yeah, I was like, it was just interesting. And everything else was like left perfect. That was also why it was like super interesting. Like it was almost like no one had even stayed. There was just all of the black underwear left on the ground.
Okay. Yeah. That's a new one. That's a new one. All right, Sarah, how about yourself?
I had just hired my first team member and I was like, cool, I'm gonna get some time back. I was doing consultations at the time. And I remember messaging my team member and I was like, hey, I'm gonna do this. What I'm doing. I'm gonna be I can't talk for the next hour or two. You're going to be great. It was like day 2 or 3. I get back on after the consultation. I'm like, hey, how's the thing going? see a slew of messages from her. There was a guest who had a bullet, multiple bullets, go through the home. And she had just reported it that morning. Like she was terrified, didn't want to leave her bed to let us know what had happened. And so that's a whole other story, but yeah, just a friendly gunfight a block
outside.
away.
Yeah. Like a block away. It was like ricochet shots through the like, so it wasn't
It had
even
nothing
like,
to do with the guest.
not even anything to do like with the direct neighbors. It was like
No.
further down the road, but it was like crazy how they had ricocheted off of other homes
through the kitchen, through the staircase, and she was by herself. Her boyfriend was a professional hockey player, and he was away. Just, I was gone for an hour, and
So
I just hired a team member. Yeah,
literally these bullets had entered the house.
oh yeah,
Oh my gosh.
oh yeah, it was terrifying.
Wow. Okay. Well, if you weren't scared about doing short-term rentals, now you are. So you just
that was
lost a bunch of
so
people.
like, yes, we're and honestly, no one
was hurt.
No one was even hurt in the stray bullets either. Just so you know, it was kind of like an interesting whole thing that happened there. So,
but still,
it
there
happened.
we go. You asked for one.
All right. So already we're titled Avoid Nightmare on Elm Street, Top Tips for Protecting Your STR. And we've already got a horror story and then bullets. So yeah, let's get into protection mode.
Yeah, we had a kind of
sounds better.
segue. Yeah.
For those of you that are joining us live, post your questions. These two are big in the podcasting realm of Airbnb and short-term rentals with the Thanks for Visiting podcast. If you are not already listening to it, go subscribe, leave your 5-star reviews. You can do that for the Fearless Investor podcast too, if you want, but definitely go and do that for the Thanks for Visiting podcast. Sarah and Annette, let's kind of get to the bottom of your stories. You did not know each other before short-term rentals, which is super cool. And now you're doing all these things together. You got a podcast, you got properties together, you own properties together and separately. Just take me back to, let's hear the individual stories first. Lead me right up to deciding to get into short-term rentals. What did life look like before?
Go. All right, let's do this. So I was I worked for my career about 20 years prior, starting in short-term rentals, but I was an operator of small businesses. I would come in and take them from about, under 1 million to 5 to 10 million. That's kind of like my sweet spot to help them. I would hire the team, I would do the bookkeeping, I would do marketing, I would kind of like set them all up. And I did that for a residential house painting company that ended up franchising and then getting bought out by a larger franchise, and got a lot, I'd say just so much work there in small business and learning how to grow something. And then I parlayed that into a apparel brand that we were e-commerce and retail. And I helped literally started with the owner of that in his parents' basement, and they'll probably do about 20 million in sales this year. And
wow.
Actually, both of those companies have sold. But I will say that I got quit from one of them, AKA fired. And it was the best thing that ever happened because I was an employee and an equity owner. So it ended up working out for me. I wanted to get quit. I had great attorneys, but I was really like, wait, what's next? I'd been going to an office, for 20 years. Like my job at that point, like I couldn't get anything done if I wasn't there physically. I was was working with my teams. It was very laborious works when it was the house painting that was dictated by weather. Then when I moved over to apparel, we were shipping out physical products. So I had to be there all the time. And I was like, I've got to get out of this. And so I didn't know what was next. And I wanted to become a part of the sharing economy. And at that point, I was like, I don't really want to be an Uber driver, but what's this Airbnb stuff? And we're in Columbus, Ohio. So it's like, what's going to work, sharing economy? But I have a friend who's a real estate developer, and he had actually 1,000+ apartments, and he had a few that were like on the market for a while. And I was like, hey, let's do some short-term rentals. And he was like, yeah. Annette, that's cool. I think he really wanted to hire me to work for him, but I was like, look, I'm never going to work for anyone again. I wanted to work for myself. And so he was like, my team is dialed in on how we do this long-term stuff. If you want to start one short-term, let's do it. And I was like, that was going to be my money to help me just figure out what was next. We did one. He was like, hey, you want to do another one? Do another one, do another one. And so we kept doing more, and came to me one day. I'm like, wait, I didn't know what my next step was, but I'm like, everybody's asking me, friends, family, relatives, they were all asking me about Airbnb. And I was like, wait a second. is this thing that was supposed to be my side hustle while I figured
Yeah.
out the next thing, my next thing? And so I had a light bulb moment there, and I'll let Sarah pick up her past, and then I'll tell you when that light bulb moment, how we came together.
Well,
Yeah.
isn't that funny too? Like, I remember a moment that I had with one of my mentors, and I was at like 20 properties at the time. And I was like, yeah, I just need to get more flips. And he's like, why are you trying to do more flips if like all these people want you to run it as an Airbnb? I was like, well, it's my side hustle. He's like, no, it's your full-time thing now. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it kind of is. So it's funny when you have that transition. I love that story, and there's things that I want to point out of that, but I want to hear Sarah's first.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine's very different. I moved to New York City after college. I always knew that I wanted to be on Broadway. I wanted to sing, dance, and act. And I did. I was a paid performer for 17 years, and I went all over. I've gotten paid to sing and dance in every state in our amazing country. And I went to a lot of other countries and also performed in New York. And I loved it. And it's all I ever wanted to do. 5 years ago from right now, if you would have told me I'd be living in Columbus, Ohio, doing what I'm doing now, I would have thought you were crazy, because I am type A. Like, I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. Well, I also am an overachiever. And in 2010, my husband was like, hey, you should read this book. And it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I became obsessed with, like, okay, as an actor, like, that's very transactional, and like there's a bit of a ceiling. I'm part of the actors union. And so I was like, how can I make some more money, while I sleep? And I saw this little house in Queens, Astoria. And I was like, we're going to buy that. And Nick's like, how? And I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And so we went through some FHA financing, and we bought this house. But the reason I loved it in 2010 was because there's a door going down to the basement. In my mind, I really believe actors invented the short-term rental economy, because when you're an actor, there's lots of Facebook pages called like gypsy housing. And if you get a gig, if you're going to go on tour, you need someone to take over your lease for a short amount of time. And so you get an actor to pay your rent for you, and they move their stuff in, then your dressers and all that. And they take over, your monthly payments while you're on tour. And then when you come back, you're like, cool, your sublet's over, I'm coming back. So I saw that door down in that basement as like, my friends can rent that for me. Okay. So, but at the same time, 2010, people started talking to this Airbnb platform. And I got to thinking,
2010, you were one of the first then. Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We did it before like anyone else had like tested this out. And I remember, I'll never forget sitting on the arm of my couch in my living room in Queens, telling my husband that I wanted to give the key to our basement to strangers to sleep down there. I was like, we could 3x what we're getting from my friends to Airbnb downstairs. Hard no. I was like, let's try it. So we locked off the basement from the rest of our home. So it was kind of house hacking, but not really. We renovated the whole thing. Also, at the same time, Instagram was becoming a thing. And we shared this journey on Instagram, and we found ourselves on an HGTV show for 8 episodes, flipping a vacation rental. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to add value to houses, and then I want to share it with people for a nightly rate. Also, as an actor between gigs, like I was unemployed sometimes, and I found myself working in hotels and restaurants and just serving, because I was pretty good at serving people. And so I just had a knack for systems. Like, if you ever worked in a restaurant or hotel, like the back of house operations, like you got to get the food from point A to point B and get that guest happy. I was building systems for our short-term rental, because this is before podcasts or anything like that were around. And I just fell in love with it. And so we did that for about 4 or 5 years, and decided to sell that home as an operating short-term rental. I think we bought it for like $475,000, and we sold it for about $1 million 4 years later. And we took those, and of course we didn't pay tax on that, because my husband and I lived there. It was more than 2 years. And we took those proceeds and we moved to the Midwest after a tour in our RV to see what market we wanted to invest in. Decided Columbus, Ohio is not landlocked in any way. We're in the middle of the state. We're a state capital. We have big hospitals. We have a huge university here. The Ohio State University is here. And just a lot of Fortune 500 companies are here. Yeah. So, and Cincinnati's pretty far. Cleveland's far. State lines are far. It's like, this is where we're going to be. And we started short-term renting here. But that's when Annette and I met. and our city started like imposing some pretty harsh regulations. We're all about regulations. We think it weeds out the bad operator. We know it does.
Mhm.
But when you're impeding on our, our right to own property, I'm going to get involved. And so we went to the city council meeting, and that's where Matt and I met.
Yeah, we sat. I strategically placed myself next to her because I was stalking her on Instagram. But we sat next to each other at the city council meeting, and it was just important that we be there because I will let you know, Airbnb hosts showed up at all of those meetings. There were several of them in our city. Airbnb hosts showed up in full force, and those restrictions that they were going to put into place did not happen.
Boom.
So we 1,000% know from participating that showing up matters. So when you get those emails or you're in those Facebook groups, you need to attend these events. And sometimes it's before they're even going to take place. I had never been to a city council meeting before in my life, but I am so glad that I went because those restrictions did not come into place, and I met my future business partner there. So I just want to make sure that everybody listening, if you get that notification, don't think it doesn't matter. It not only matters in your town, it matters for the whole entire industry. So please show up. Please make sure you attend those.
And if you guys have not already listened to it, if you just go to my YouTube channel or my podcast and look for the episode with Theron Lewis, Theron is huge on helping to literally strategize how to collaborate, how to bring people together, and then how to, go in full force over to city council if it does get to that point. And just collaborating, though, I mean, that's the first thing about it, right? And you two, this is a good transition because this is right around the point that you two started to collaborate. You meet each other at this city council meeting. How did it now turn in from just meeting to where you're doing a bunch of business together?
Yeah, it was here's what's so an amazing thing from being a host. I always thought that I would be like really great friends with all my guests. I'm a networker. I'm a people person. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so cool. I'm gonna be friends with all my guests, never knowing that the hosting community is really where it's at. These are all of our people, and hosting burnout is real. So you need to find friends. You need to find fellow hosts that you can connect with. You can talk about laundry with. You can talk about guest amenities. You can talk about early check-ins, late checkouts. And so Sarah and I would just spend hours once we met talking. And we were like, wait, if we have these questions and if we are like trying to problem solve together, there has got to be hundreds, if not thousands of tens of thousands of other hosts out there that are having these same questions. And why don't we record these conversations and include everyone? Because we do know how lonely it can get when you're a host, because you're a host entrepreneur, and it's not a lot of things that you can talk to, your friends and family, or they just get sick of hearing about it. And we just want to talk about it all the time. So we started started the podcast, and it took some time, but wow, we really started connecting with other hosts across the country. We now have a paid membership and a YouTube channel. It just keeps growing and growing, but we want to up-level what it means to be a host. And we know that's going to up-level the whole entire industry. This is a professional industry, and we know that we need to get all of the voices. We just had you on our show. We want to connect and just bring that message to as many people as possible.
That is, I mean, the mission behind that is really one that I think when we think about it, right, it was kind of like what we talked about on your podcast. You think you meet someone and you think competitor, right? That's a host, that's a competitor. But what you've taken is the opportunity to collaborate, and it really is going to protect this industry to start teaching other hosts how to be better hosts. The person who heard about Airbnb, heard about short-term rentals, and says, I've got a house, let me just throw it on there and start accepting anyone into the house. And meanwhile, they're accepting locals with no reviews and no profile photo. And they're wondering why there was a giant party, that one night on a Friday night. What a shock, But most people don't even think about that. Year one of my business, I'm sure you guys can look back to year one and think about, all of the mistakes that you made. But year one of my business, I had no pre-qualification process. And with 5 properties in our first 6 months, we must have had close to 30 claims. And then year 2, we learned this entire, hey, how do we pre-qualify? How do we look for the red flags? And I think we had 1 claim per month for the next 12 months with 10, then 15, then 20 properties. And I think that right there is the biggest impact that you both are already having on anyone that listens to your podcast is just how to be a better host, and therefore less complaints in the city, which means less regulations, less issues. So thank you for that mission. What has been something along this way? First of all, when did you start the podcast, and what has been some of the more satisfying moments that you've had in trying to help operators here in the last, however many years that you started the podcast, where you've seen an actual impact happening?
For sure.
Yeah, we started 3 years ago.
Nice.
And so we're in our 3rd year. We have so many amazing stories.
Yeah. And a lot of them have to do with aha moments for listeners
Yeah.
of, and Sarah and I want to preface this is we are very focused on the operation side. Our podcast and a lot of our content currently doesn't focus solely on acquisition because there's a lot of information about that. So we feel like that's kind of the market is, taken care of there. But so we focus more on, okay, after you've gotten that property. But the stories about how, this is a business. And I think people realizing like there is real money, like, wait a second, this is life-changing money. This is career, like we can change careers, generational wealth. That's the type of stuff where they're like, wait, I thought this like hobby, like, wait a second, this can replace our income. And so those stories about how people are getting their time back, how they're growing their real estate portfolios faster than they thought. And then like that, the hospitality, it's all those little stories. Sarah and I call it elevated reciprocity. When we hear the hosts, when they tell us stories about someone getting engaged or a wedding or a family that hadn't gotten together in so many years. So there's all those other stories and how that trickle down can impact is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So why should it, I think the story of you two meeting and collaborating is really important. Why did you see each other as collaborators rather than competitors?
It goes back to our personality types, just knowing thyself. I knew that acting's kind of lonely. And whenever I went to a room to audition, like I'm next to like 10 other Sarahs. They look like me, they sound like me, and we're up for the same job. And there's one job. So I was done having everyone around me be my competitor. And I just knew the power of collaboration. I mean, there are things, we've taken personality tests where I know how I fit into Annette's world, and I know how to respect Annette and her work ethic. And she knows the same for me. And that opens up insane opportunities when we can share each other's strengths and connections. I mean, we are 2x where we would be if we were by ourselves. And we really believe that. And so even if it's not going into business with someone, it's if you can get a coffee with someone, and it's not just if you have an abundance mindset. We talked about that when you were on our show, but my gosh, if you go into it with an open mind and that you don't know everything, because I've been doing this since 2010. And I went to the SGR Wealth Conference and I picked up some things. You know what I mean? Like there is always something to learn from someone else. And that having that open mindset is how you do that.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's good. That's really good. All right. Claire, I see your question. Brooke, I see your question. We're going to get to those in a second. If you are listening live right now on Airbnb Masterminds, please post your questions for these two incredibly knowledgeable operators who've been doing this for, let's see, you said, Sarah, almost 12 years, I guess, is where you would be. How about you, Annette? How long have you been?
I'm like 2017. I'm not
Okay.
as seasoned as Sarah. This is one place she's older than me because I'm a lot older than her.
So
I can,
a lot older.
I mean, a little bit older.
We'll skirt that subject. Go ahead.
The meat of it is that you both have a ton of experience, so we need to take advantage of it. Tell us, the title today is Avoiding Nightmare on Elm Street Situations, How to Protect Your Listings. Why do you think there are so many issues with the guest to host situation of, I think me personally, I look at it in a lot of like landlords and homeowners, they get scared about getting into it, and then they realize it's actually not as bad as they thought it would be. But then there's those stories that we hear out there of, a shooting or an issue where the house has major damage or, God forbid, burns down. Why do you think so much of that happens before we go into how to avoid that?
I mean, I might get some tomatoes thrown at me during this, but a lot of it goes into the operator, the person responsible. you'd be surprised. You can't be asleep at the wheel. You've got to be very involved. So I think that a lot of those things could be avoided in the way that you run your property as a business. So I think, we tell people every day, don't be scared. Like it's an amazing platform. So this whole industry is built on trust.
Yep.
So, and we believe that, but I think taking ownership of why things like this could potentially happen at your property, and taking a step back and understanding there's so much that goes into it before that guest even checks in that could help prohibit that from happening.
And I think I'm just going to harp on that just a little bit more of taking ownership, because we give a lot of tough love over in our thanks for visiting world of it. It's no one else's fault but yours. And once you take ownership, once you become the true CEO, CFO of your business, that's when magic can happen. And you start saying, no, this is what I could have done. Here are the SOPs I could have put in place to avoid that. And if I can't avoid it, like my shooting example at the beginning, that happened a block away and these bullets ricocheted, but like what is the protocol then next time? And how can I share that with my community so that we can be ahead of things like that? So really just taking ownership, not pointing your fingers at Airbnb or VRBO or your owner or your guest. Really just how can I own this and make it better next time is where you're going to start to just rest easy and just be the rock star host.
Sounds like you've read Extreme Ownership.
I haven't, but I should.
You haven't? Oh my gosh.
No,
well, then
but I'm going to write that down.
Then you wrote that book without even knowing, because that's the whole, it looks like Annette maybe has.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah. Extreme Ownership is a great book. So it reiterates everything you just said there, Sarah. I love it. So how are you now? All right, this situation happens. I'm sure you both have had those situations, whether it was the gunshot or it was something else, where you're like, I need to tighten up some things to make it better. What are some of the common things that you both have done to start to eliminate some of these situations?
I'm going to say this also, being very honest about your property guest count and what it can truly withstand, not just the home, but the neighborhood, the building. What's the capacity of the home? I see a lot of people get in trouble because they're trying to put too many people in a space that should not have that many people. So right there, just being very honest about how many guests your home can accommodate. I think that's going to help you alleviate a lot of these situations, because either A, wear and tear, B, the neighbors seeing so many people going in and out. So we are very anti heads in beds. So we like to be very on point with how many guests. And I've actually gone a lot lower sometimes on, I could fit more people. I could have that pull out couch. I could put 2 queen beds, stuff like that. But just like, we're like, what's the long term? You got to be in this for the long term. And maybe the nightly rate might not be as high, but I know over time it's going to be a better experience for everyone involved. And we think about everyone in these spaces. We always think about the community. We think about the direct neighbor. We think about the guests too, and setting the correct guest expectation. Are jamming 16 people in this 2-bedroom, is that going to be a good experience for them?
Yeah.
And other nightmares too, that not just the guest nightmare, right? And the things that can happen with the guest is the nightmares of, like you said, the house burning down.
Yeah.
That's a lot of conversations that weren't happening, at least when we, started speaking up, is safety. What are international building codes? If you're going to operate a property, you better know what is, what the distance between the mattress and the top of the bunk bed railing. You better know when you need to have a handrail with how many steps. Like, you have a responsibility for that asset, for the owner or your own property, and for that guest safety, because guests show up and they think it's safe, right? Like, there aren't these commercial regulations on these units, less than 4 units per building or a single family home. But that does not mean that if something were to happen, they're going to look at you as an operator, not knowing or not looking it up is not going to be an excuse. So, taking responsibility and just knowing how to protect the home and the guests in the home is another way to help you. Again, things can still happen, but if you can just be on top of it and have a preventative maintenance program in place, that's also a great way to not have a nightmare on Elm Street.
And that is actually a really good segue to this question from Claire. She says, I'm looking for a safety inspection checklist that my handyman and inspector go through in our homes on a monthly basis to make sure the home is safe, clean, and ready for guests. So any recommendations on Is that something that you guys have in your education as well?
Absolutely. But we have a software that we use that we love. We've been using it for years now. I don't know, Kyle, if you use it, but it's called Breezeway.
I've heard of it. I haven't used it though.
Okay. Well, I will never use anything else. I've used other platforms that help trust but verify my turnover inspection team and my turnover team, the cleaners, but it also has a safety component. They have a whole safety department at Breezeway. Nice. And if you get your property safety certified, if you have certain insurance partners, you can get a discount for either your owner or yourself on your insurance rates, which is also awesome. But yeah, so the check, and they give you those safety checklists inside there. It's like, why reinvent the wheel? Because they're actually pretty great. But yeah,
that is something we were going to this is a great question, Claire, but we were going to actually talk about this again. Avoiding those Nightmare on Elm Street situations also is something like Breezeway. When our turnover team and inspector, you should always have an inspector, because this inspector that's walking through before the guest checks in, if you have a guest claim that, you know, that this wasn't clean or something was broken before they check in, we use the Breezeway app. We take pictures of certain things before they check in. We have all of that data there. That way we know that the cleaning team did their excellent job that they almost always do. We have someone walking through checking all of the safety features. On the Breezeway app, they're going through actually checking them off. Did you check for, the smoke alarms? Did you double check the fire extinguishers? That when you have that there, that is going to help you. If there's something that's damaged, if something was broken, having that proof that things were taken care of. And the excellent thing too, Claire, I want you to know with these safety inspections, a lot of times you can get proper insurance. You can get a discount on your insurance if you are safety certified. So these are things that also would really just be great for those purposes too. But yes, it's a property like management, but also home care. And you can catalog all that stuff. Like, when was the last time I changed my filters? What is the make and model of my refrigerator? It can all be, right there on the app for you.
That's awesome. And you just answered Gabriel's question. Gabriel said, what insurance companies do you recommend for STR? Proper insurance is definitely the Cadillac, the Porsche of STR insurance.
Sure.
Proper.insure, Gabriel, is the name of that one. That's all. It's not proper.com. It's proper.insure. That threw me off the first time. All right. So let's talk about, because you brought up something that's really interesting to me. A Nightmare on Elm Street kind of situation doesn't have to be a guest creating an issue. It can be the fact that your team didn't do their job, right? So, for example, recently we had a situation where a guest was saying, hey, the pool pump did not work. And we didn't have the right processes in place to say, well, was that a guest issue, or did our cleaner accidentally do that? Did our pool guy accidentally do that? So I think you bring up a really good point where, I mean, it's not just about putting your house up on Airbnb and figuring out who to accept, who not to accept, but there's so many systems that go along with making sure that you have that check but verify opportunity with your team. What's maybe one way that you find that you do something that not a lot of operators do that you can teach us today?
An inspector.
Oh yeah.
Easy.
I think a lot of people are blown away. I mean, I think it's hopefully it's a little bit of us harping on it, but the role of the inspector is, we've been doing it for a long time. I mean, hotels do it, and they have for a long time. So it's nothing we've invented, and it's not a babysitter for the cleaning team. We also make that very clear. The cleaning team shows up and they've got a mountain to climb, right? So the inspector can also be viewed as a detailer, and also the safety inspectors, right? So they've got a different checklist. And so now you're not putting your business on the shoulders of professional cleaners. They're not necessarily the people who are going to make sure that your place is stocked, or that the remote control works, or that the fire extinguisher wasn't used and then put back. You know what I mean? So that the next guest goes to get it. And it's not just because it's never happened doesn't mean it never will. So making sure that you're checked into reality there. But so the role of the inspector for us, especially in our community, has set our hosting management company apart from others. Our owners are like, wait, so you have someone come and check it between every clean and every guest arrival? Absolutely. Because there's just so many things within a home. Our homes are snowflakes. The guests are snowflakes. My owners are snowflakes. And so I've got to make sure that these are all jiving well together so we can all make money.
I love it. That is really good. How many properties are in both of your portfolios?
So we have 36 doors, and within those doors, we have a mixture of vacation rentals, metro rentals. Some of them we own, and then some we professionally manage for others. We don't do any arbitrage, but we do property management for other owners.
So 36 is not a small amount. We must be talking about multiple inspectors. I'm assuming it's not just one person. Okay.
And that's the thing too, that I think now it's people, okay, now they're adding the inspector, but now they might burn out their inspector, right? Because they're like, okay, I got this person. I got to squeeze them out for all. The hosting burnout is real. You guys, we're open 24/7, 365. You got to give these people a break, so letting them have days off where they're not getting dinged and called and people yelling at them, or like, even if they did nothing wrong. We all know in hospitality, like it is hard to please some people. So, we have more than one.
And I will say, I want to be clear on this to give people visibility. We are in a very tight, like 5-mile radius, but we have been intentional about that. And built the business that way so we could have these systems and processes in place. So we do want to let everybody know, we know some people are in different markets where it might take an hour to get from one property to the next. So we do want to let you know we are in a very, very tight area, and even our traffic here, we know how quick we can get to these houses. And some of them, which this is a hosting hot tip, if you can buy something that's multifamily and have 4 doors under one roof, and it makes things a lot easier because you have the same refrigerator, the same stove, the same type of lock. So that's something we do want to be very, very honest in that we have that tight like that.
I think that's a good point too. And by the way, guys, seeing your questions, please keep on posting questions. We're going to ask Annette and Sarah all the questions that are posted here in the group. I think that's a really good point, because especially in the beginning, if we are co-hosting and arbitraging, we just get excited about a deal, right? We get excited that, oh my gosh, I live in California, but my friend in Columbus, Ohio just told me they want me to host their house. And we don't remember that, or we don't even consider the fact that, like, hey, how much control or how much of a pulse am I going to be able to really have on how things are going 5, 6, 7 states away? Now, some people have been able to do a really good job of it, but I'm really more in the same mode as you. Is if you can start in your own backyard, great, start there. If you can't, at least try to figure out how to do it maybe as a room in your own house, and then go to a different market and build your team over there. But I think there's so much power to discuss about having a team in one area, figuring out that area, and then kind of deciding from there. Why do you, it sounds like you're on the same page as me. Why do you think that at least focusing all of your attention in the beginning in one market is so important?
For me, and this is my big beef with these bigger companies, is like, listen, love the technology. I love that you're trying to solve all my problems as an operator with an app. At the end of the day, this business is built on the backs of people who need to have their hands on these houses. And so if you're going to not take in consideration the amount of support, human support you're going to need in these homes, and the level of quality that I'm hoping you want to have, especially if you're part of Kyle's Facebook group and listening to his podcast, you care, right? You're showing up because you care. So taking that into consideration, that they have not yet figured out how to have robots clean toilets yet. So if you're going to go to another market, just what is that going to mean for you? And have you really mastered putting the right people in the right seats in your business? And if you haven't become the expert at that yet, just chill mode, you know what I mean? Grow some SOPs, build a handbook, build out systems, and then learn how to be a great person at hiring people. Because if you hire the wrong person for the wrong seat, it's going to be a disaster, which disaster is okay. Failing fast and failing forward is awesome. But do you really want to do it several states away? Is that the kind of, stress you want at this time? If it is, good luck. But that for me, it's the human aspect of it. And I really want to make sure that I'm taking care of the industry so we all can have an amazing ecosystem and industry to share. And for me, that's making sure that the quality of the stay is there. And that's on the backs of professionals. And the labor market's tough right now. So I'm just very cautious about that.
Yeah. But I have shiny object syndrome and I want to get all the technologies. So
No, and trust me, we
We've tried 'em
know it's
all.
hard. Like we have people, we've been intentional of like not wanting to grow our portfolio right now because we have other things that we are focusing on together, our personal portfolio. And like we tell people no every day and trust us, it's hard. Some of them are easy no's because they're properties that we were not interested in, but some of them are gorgeous and they have a lot of potential. But Sarah and I have been over the years that we've been working together, we have to keep whittling down like our why, and not just our why, but what our long-term goals are. And how does every single thing that we do fit in there? And I want to say this, that just a nightmare I don't want the people that are listening to get into. Hosts also are terrible at tracking their time. Okay.
so
I
good.
think it's probably the number one thing inside our group. It is a line item that we make them like, you have to fill out how much time you're spending on this, because everybody's like, oh, it's only 5 minutes on the app and it's only 10 minutes here. And it's like, they're not adding up their time. So if that is something that we can offer to you today, please start tracking your time, because your nightly rate should reflect that. The way that you hire your team should reflect that. And man, your time is so valuable. So we just want to make sure that if hosting is right for you, that's another thing that we find. Like a lot of people are like, are you really making money? You're not taking into account any of the time that you're spending doing this. So we want to encourage everybody, start tracking your time, and because there's a lot of time involved in the property.
I remember going back, might have been a year, little over a year ago. I was encouraged to do a time study, and I was over here saying like, oh yeah, I'm working 3 to 5 hours in my business. And then I did a time study and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally just to fill in time doing things that I should be hiring my team to do. Like, for example, out of obsessive compulsion, like I needed every single Price Labs dollar and rule to be exactly to my liking. And even though it didn't seem like a lot because I really enjoyed that, I was like, I'm literally spending an hour on this per day, not to mention checking in with my team, not to mention just because I like seeing reports, looking at that for another hour. I'm like, I'm working like 2 to 3 hours a day on this, but it was stuff that I really enjoyed. So it just didn't feel like work, but it made me realize like, holy cow, I could be spending time on pouring into my team, on growing the business, on creating better systems, on helping equip my team with better things rather than just doing these in the business tasks. And now I'm looking at it and my team is starting to share like, hey, the last month we had some burnout, and now I'm going to have them do that time study, because we're already hearing things like, oh yeah, I'm responding to guest communication way too much. Whoa, that's why we hired VAs. Why are you responding to that so much? And we're starting to see these little things. It's like, it feels easy, it feels right at the time, but when you stop and actually think about it, it's like, no, this is why I'm getting burnout, is because I'm just doing things that are in front of me rather than focusing on what's actually important. So I
Well,
love that you brought that up.
Sarah and I have our two. So Sarah wears a busy badge. She's very proud of
I
the busy
can't.
work
I'm
that she did.
busy.
I wear a busy blanket. It's very cozy and it's the things I know how to do. They're super easy for me, but we know like I have to get out of underneath my busy blanket. She has to take off her busy badge, and we have to focus on the things that are going to grow our business, be like you said, grow our team, and be best for our clients, our guests, all that. So we totally so also we know that you're out there wearing your busy blankets and busy badges. So you really got to focus on where you want to go, because that's not going to get you there, even though it feels nice. And those are tasks we know how to do and we can crank them out, or we might even enjoy them, but is it really moving the needle?
Right. Absolutely. Okay. We got a few questions here that I want to
Let's do
share.
it.
Brooke, I see your question. Tiffany, I see your question. Those are going to be some more operational things that we'll get to in a second here, but Stephanie has a really interesting situation. So stick with me on this. My son has severe allergies, so I do not allow smoking or pets in our lake homes. I do use a short-term rental lease, but I'm wondering what you recommend as a penalty fee for people who do not follow the house rules. I have seen many different leases and have adopted, and evidence of smoking or pets after the stay will result in a deposit and an additional fee of $1,000. But I really want to deter people from breaking these rules and not come to the property at all. What are your thoughts?
My first thought is, do they understand why the rule's in place?
Mm,
Like if we remember that we're not, this is where we want to know that we're not hotels and they're real humans behind these homes and it's a family,
mhm.
maybe telling that story more quickly and concisely of why the rule's in place, and that might deter people
Mhm.
from breaking the rule.
Also, a couple of like technology tools. I don't know if, again, this depends on your insurance. It depends on your location. So I'm just going to put that little warning out there. Just having like an exterior camera. I mean, if you're seeing a pet being brought into the home, you can maybe stop that before it even gets that far. And then I know I haven't tested it yet. But I do want to offer this to you. I know there are devices out there. One of them I think is like Sensi or something like that, that can detect smoke.
Mm.
So I would look into that, because that is something also you could put in your listing is like, hey, I want to let you know I have devices, exterior camera, and also, a device in the home that can detect smoking. Just letting them know that there might deter that. So,
Because it has a big impact on my family. And
yeah, and explaining that. And my son has allergies. This is why these are house rules of ours, and we hope that you would respect them. But again, trust but verify, put that out there. Maybe make sure when you send your message in the beginning, just want to confirm there are no pets, no smoking. My son has a severe allergy. Just want to make sure you understand that. So
Yeah.
just communication there. Hope that helps.
Awesome. And Nikita adds, I've heard of Fresh Air, but haven't used it. Stephanie, thanks you so much for the suggestions. One other thing that I'll add for you, Stephanie, is if you have it in your house rules, make sure that that's one of the steps the guest has to take before actually getting approved for the stay. Is you need to approve the house rules. And in that, just like what Sarah said, I really like that idea. No smoking, no pets, because my son has severe allergies and we use the house as well, something like that. And just putting that fee, I think can make a big difference. So great ideas there from both of you. Okay. A little more just general operational questions here. One from Brooke. I have 2 lake homes. I recently purchased kayaks for the guests. Should I just consider that to be part of the rental rate, or should those be an additional fee? I
My
guess you
question
put a
is,
lot of things into this, right? Like hot tub and kayaks
Yes.
and all these different things, right?
well, we're going to have a response that she didn't ask for, but it's like, are you legally set up to offer the kayaks?
Ooh.
That's a lot of thing that people don't take in consideration is what's the liability? I mean, there are companies that just do kayak rentals. And the reason is because they are set up to legally offer it. So obviously we're not lawyers, but really take into consideration, like if you can take on that liability, talk to your insurer and also talk to your lawyer and make sure you have the right waiver in place. And that sometimes you have to make sure to really protect yourself. Now, I do know this too, that if you have like a hot tub, at this point, a hot tub is, there's a known risk, right? So if anyone would ever like slip and fall around the hot tub or like it's likely, as long as someone signed a waiver, a release waiver, that you'll be all right. But again, just make sure before you look at the money component, because what will you lose if there's a lawsuit?
And if you have any of these things like kayaks, bicycles, pool toys, things like that, they are a huge liability, because here's the deal. Those do need to be checked before every single guest. What if there was a hole punctured in the kayak? They went over rocks or something so huge liability. We know it also, there's potential to make money there, but we have to let you know, you do need to check on all of that.
And so make sure your inspector checklist, if you do offer it and you're like, no, ladies, I talked to my lawyer, I'm insured for it. Just make sure your inspection between guest stays, that's on there, and that your inspector does that, maybe proof of with a photo or something like that, because those are time stamped and all that kind of good stuff. Just to give you like a little like, hey, no, I did this. Like we were on top of our stuff.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
love how you just tied that back to a potential Nightmare on Elm Street situation. So if you did have all those things in place, would you do an extra rate, or would you
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
put it in?
We just like to.
Ooh,
I think you have to play with it.
yeah, so we would do a lot of analysis. What was the person's name that asked the question?
This was Brooke.
Brooke. So this is something where we would look at our competitors. Is this a way that you could stand out and get that booking? We would take a look at the market around. We would hopefully, your numbers and what you bought the kayaks for and what kind of return you were anticipating to get on them. It's also something, you could test it. you could charge for them and see if that works. And then if, you could also experiment and just maybe put that in your listing. So we would do a couple of different things with it, most likely, and test it both ways and see what works. But again, I would first start with market research and competition.
And I would just add on to that is to be careful that you are writing these data points down, right? It's not enough to feel like you're making more money.
Right.
Are you making more money, right?
Yep.
Or is money related into like occupancy rates or your ADR? So just make sure that's another thing too, that as hosts, sometimes we like to like not do that. And we get that for all the time. It's like, well, I feel like it won't work, or I feel like I make more money this way. Well, where's the data? Data over drama. So make sure you're writing it down.
Ooh, I like that, data over drama. One way that we did this, so we have a Bass Lake, it's a lake property, and we have a boat slip, and we said, well, do we charge extra for the boat slip, or do we just ingrain it into the price? And we looked at all the neighboring properties that had boat slips, and none of them were charging extra. It was just part of the nightly price. But then we had an issue with people losing the card, and that was costing us $75 every time someone lost a card. So what we did is we ingrained it in the price. But we said, are you going to use the boat slip? If you are, you have to sign a waiver, and you have to send us a refundable deposit of, we've actually done $300 because we want to put that fear in them of
Right.
that card. So
fearful Kyle.
putting fear in the heart of everyone.
Oh my God.
Yes. So Brooke, that's another option, but great question. And then very simple question from Tiffany, who actually was on our podcast a couple of years ago. What dynamic pricing do you use, and how do you fill in gaps during slow months? So do you have, I know Columbus maybe has a slow month or two in there.
We do.
Yeah.
Oh God. But we're prepared for it. Cause again, we look at our business holistically. So it's try not to get too siloed month to month. Understanding your whole picture is best. We like price labs. It's not as pretty as their competitors, but I do like what the data that they can give you, which is really nice. And then we haven't started using this yet, but a little hot tip. This is a hot tip. And again, we are obsessed with Breezeway, so I'm just gonna put that out there. But they have a messaging component to their software, and they will detect orphan nights and automatically send the guest, hey, do you want to come early? Hey, do you want to stay an extra day? Without me even having to think about
hot tip. Get those gap nights booked.
You can do that.
Breezeway is doing that.
Breezeway is doing that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is. And hopefully every listener, you have light bulbs going off, because this isn't even something you have to have an app for. Like, you can start doing this. Hey, we notice
manually.
We're looking at our calendar, you're booked, and we have this, the night before you check in or the night after, like, hey, we'd like to offer it to you at a reduced rate. And so, you might not want to do that with you might want to get a feel for the client first, but that gap night messaging is huge. So just thinking ahead and looking at your calendar.
We have done that manually starting a few months back, and it made all the difference. And I'm blown away that there's something that can do that automatically. So that is exciting. Thank you for sharing that. All right, we got time for 2 quick questions here, and they're going to come from Rebecca and Jeremy.
Let's do it.
Rebecca says, do you have any recommendations or market research companies on just basically return on investment data? That is, aside from AirDNA, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a brand new product, so we're just going to put this out there, but we had a call with the founder, and it seems to be lovely. It is STR Insights. Yeah. Please look at that. I would offer, normally we would say AirDNA, but we'll say AirDNA and STR Insights. Look at that program also.
Yep. And that's with Kenny. I have a call with him next week. So
awesome. Boom. Yeah.
Cool. Jeremy says, hi ladies. I'm the guy that set the StayFi Wi-Fi password to thanks for visiting. Oh,
awesome. Yes. We love that.
Yes. That made me feel.
Everyone can do that. Please. Thanks for visiting. Please feel free to steal Jeremy's idea.
There we go. He says, do you have any properties with hot tubs? Do you recommend having a hot tub? If the data shows more income, is it worth all the maintenance?
Yes. The answer is yes.
Yep.
On all fronts.
Yep.
So there's markets where like not having it is like not having a bathroom. Like you have to have it. Like you just do. Yeah. But there's other markets, like we've got one downtown Columbus, and it is the only in a 3 or 4 block radius. We're the only ones that have it. And it's like, it shows in the numbers. So it is worth it. Yep. But I would highly recommend outsourcing the
Yeah.
upkeep.
Have a plan
Is-
for it though. Like, and this is our other words of wisdom. It's not this whole Nightmare on Elm Street. It's not if, it's when.
Yeah.
All the things are going to happen. So it's not if, it's when.
That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, it is what makes it fun. So when you have that mentality of it's not if, it's when this happens, what is my plan going to be? So that's
Get the hot tub.
Yep.
Journey.
Awesome. You two are a ton of fun. Thank you so much. How can people get connected with you? Obviously, they need to go and start subscribing and listening to the Thanks for Visiting podcast. But how?
Yes. So thanks for visiting. Anywhere you get your podcast, we are on YouTube. We just started that. So that's at YouTube and then / thanks for visiting. We offer a free workshop every month. So please come and join us for that. That is thanksforvisiting.me / workshop. And on Instagram, we are at thanksforvisiting_. So come hang out, DM us, let us know that you found us through Kyle. We would love that.
Awesome. Thank you both, Sarah and Annette, for helping our audience to conquer the world of Airbnb and short-term rentals today. You two are awesome.
Yeah, let's level it up.
Thank you.
Show notes for this one, fearlesskyle.com / thanks for visiting. Simple as that. So Sarah and Annette have an amazing podcast. You heard the YouTube channel. They got the Instagram page. Go follow them. Go start learning how to be a better operator. And again, take it as a responsibility, right? It's not just something that we are looking to make money on. It's something that if you are doing this the right way and you're trying to build a business, you have to be the best in your market, and you have to collaborate with the best and help make other people in your market better as well, so that you can protect the integrity of this industry. That's it today for the Fearless Investor Podcast. Go out there and conquer the world of Airbnb and short-term rentals.